welcome to Honest Mental Health Talks. Today, before we get started, I want to ask that if you're watching these videos and you're getting anything from them, you're enjoying them, you're learning something from them, leave a like below. If you want to subscribe to it, go right ahead. Maybe leave me a comment and let me know what you'd like to hear me talk about. I just want to know what's out there, who's listening, and how much impact this is having, and also what you want to hear me talk about. However, for today, we're going to talk about something that isn't all that wonderful and fun, but it's something that's impacting a lot of us right now, and that's grief. Grief is basically the emotional response to the loss of something important in your life. So you can grieve over anything. It doesn't have to be a person. It doesn't have to even be the death of a person if it's related to someone. It could be you're grieving over the loss of your job. You're grieving over the loss of your car. You're grieving over uh, the loss of a friendship. You break up with someone and things just don't turn out well. Right now, something that a friend of mine pointed out that he was seeing, and when I looked into it a little bit more, I agree with him and I'm seeing the same thing. But right now, I'm seeing the majority of the people in the United States of America grieving over their way of life. And I don't mean the way that they make money, I mean the way that they live. Right now, due to we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, middle of 2020, we don't live like we used to. We can't live like we used to. Because of that, a lot of people are going through the stages of grief and they're reacting in the same fashion as they would if a loved one or a close relative were to pass away, and they don't know how to handle it because I think in all honesty they don't realize that what they're dealing with is grief. They're overwhelmed by their emotions and they're just going through the motions at this point in time without realizing that they're dealing with grief. Some years ago, a very intelligent woman, a very intelligent doctor by the name of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, sat down, went through a bunch of research, and cataloged what she listed as the stages of grief. And the more you hear about it and the more you think about it, the more you put it together, the more you realize that I think she's spot on. I think she has been for a while. The psychiatric field, the counseling field has long accepted her stages of grief as being an accurate representation of people responding to grief. Give me just a second. I'm going to read to you what the stages are so I don't mess them up. So, the stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So those are the stages that each and every one of us will go through to some extent when we are experiencing grief. Now, to explain a little bit better, these are not a linear progression. You don't start with one and end with it, start with denial and end with acceptance. You can go through these kind of in any order. You can bounce back and forth between a couple of them. You can circle through the whole thing more than once, grieving the same thing. I did that myself when my father passed away some time ago. I went through the entire process, thought I was done, something kicked it back off, and I started all over again. And I went back and forth through it for a while. And you know something? You know what that makes me? That makes me human. That's what people do. That's what's going to happen. So if it happens to you, don't sit here and let somebody say, well, you're not doing this right. There is no right way. There is no wrong way to grieve for someone, for something, for an esoteric existential concept such as a way of life. There's no one process. So don't let somebody tell you you're doing it wrong. What you need to do is figure out what you're doing, you know, accept that you're grieving something. Normally it's pretty easy. A friend died. I literally lost a friend just a week ago, and I went through the grief process with that. Several of us did. A lot of the people in the same community that he and I ran in, we all dealt with the grieving process. We all dealt with it in different ways, but we all grieved. There was no right way. There was no wrong way. So that's easy though. That's something you can sit there and define easily. You can sit here and understand, and somebody says, well, what's going on? It's like, oh man, my friend died, so I'm just really having a hard time handling it. And they're like, we get you. Most everyone's been through that. But when you turn around and somebody says, well, what's going on? You say, well, I'm grieving. And they're like, what? And they're like, I'm grieving 2020. I'm grieving that I can't go to the mall, that I can't go sit in a movie theater and watch the latest release with my friends and my family, that I can't go sit at a crowded restaurant and laugh with people, that I can't go hang out at my club, my bar, my dance hall, my whatever I go to. These are things that when you say you're grieving them, a lot of people just kind of give you a, what? They don't get it. But they're doing the same thing. And it's because we're taught in some weird way, in some unintentional way, I believe, that grief is only associated with the loss of a person, which is not true. There are so many ways to grieve, so many ways to show your grief. You have the old biblical rending of clothes and gnashing of your teeth. In some countries, you have people who are paid mourners who will go to people's funerals, and it is their job to cry just big crocodile tears, sobbing tears at this person's funeral so that the rest of the family doesn't have to. There are, ever been to New Orleans and you've seen the Black Parade, the double parade, where they march the body to the cemetery in a very solemn procession, but then they kick up the jazz band and march back in celebration? That's, people sit here and say they don't understand that, but at the same time, we get wakes, where everybody gets together after a funeral over at a friend's house and you toast your buddy who's been, who you just had to put in the ground, and you tell funny stories about the stuff they did in life, and you grieve them. You can accept that. You can accept that someone else does it a little bit differently. You can accept that you can grieve something other than a person. Nothing's going to be the same after all this is over. And in all honesty, we shouldn't. We let ourselves as a culture get lax to the point that when this pandemic hit, we were completely caught off guard. We were flat-footed and just got bowled over. And it's our fault. Yeah, we can point at specific people who did not do what they were supposed to. They didn't follow the orders. They didn't give the orders. They said, do this when actually you should have been doing that. It's been going all over. Right now we're trying to reopen schools before we're even anywhere near ready for it. And every time we turn around, somebody's getting pushed back home because of the fact that they've been diagnosed with COVID-19. Grieve the loss of our way of life. Grieve the loss of our freedom of being able to go out and do what we want, when we want, where we want, because we can't right now. Feel free to grieve. Feel free to show your grief. Realize what you're doing, and at the same time realize what someone else is doing. When you've got that friend over there who sits there and suddenly pops up on their Facebook and they just absolutely rants because their roots have grown out to 6 inches, because they haven't been to a hair salon since the pandemic started, because they're terrified of getting COVID, don't laugh at them. Would you laugh at someone if they sat here and said, I can't go back to the restaurant I used to take my dad to for his birthday every year. I can't go back there because he died 9 months ago and I'm not over it yet. Are you going to laugh at them about that? I certainly hope not. I certainly wouldn't. So if you're not going to laugh at somebody about that, why are you going to laugh at somebody because they're scared to go get their hair done for fear of COVID-19, or that they're grieving the fact that they can't go do this? Now, yes, some people have taken it too far. We see the videos of them every day where they're walking around, they're screaming at people because they're refusing to change. They're refusing to grieve. But even then, take a look at some of your friends. Take a look at some people you know. Have you ever known that one person who their friend passed away, their family member passed away, and they refused to grieve? They just walk around like, yeah, they're gone, never mind. Like everything's fine, just go on about their business. But then their temper is just really on edge. They will drink a lot more. They smoke a lot more. They don't hang out with you anymore. They won't go to that restaurant that they went to with that friend because They're not there. But then they're going to tell you they're not grieving. It's the same thing. They're still in the grief process. They're just internalizing it, and they're refusing to accept it. They're refusing to admit it. And that's part of their problem. Realize it's all the same. Realize that this is what's going on in all of our heads in one way or another. And I tell you, it's going to make it a lot easier getting through the day, getting through your friend list on Twitter, on TikTok, on Facebook, or whatever it is that you use. It's going to make it easier to talk with people on the phone, to talk to people face to face. When you realize that without them realizing it, without them understanding it fully, they're in a grieving process right now. So give everybody a little bit of time. Step back a little bit. Give yourself some time. Come to the understanding that this is what's going on inside your head, inside your heart and soul. And these are things that you're going to have to deal with, because it ain't getting any easier. You know, nobody's going to be able to sit here and stop people from dying. We're not going to be able to stop COVID-19 tomorrow. These are things we're going to have to come to terms with. And you're going to have to come to terms with the fact that no matter what you're grieving, the loss of a family member, the loss of a pet, a job, anything to include our way of life, you're going to have to grieve. You're going to have to go through the process, and you're going to have to accept ultimately that in the end, when you're done grieving, things will not be the same. You're going to have to accept that. You're going to have to accept the new normal. That's what I've got for you right now. We'll talk more about this later, because we're going to try to talk about some various aspects of how to handle grief later on. But for right now, I just wanted to say, give yourself a break. Realize what's going through your head, and give everybody else a break too. Y'all have a great day. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk again later. Thank you.